Hey, I'm back, and we're now going to do the last story, part of the story. And if you can remember, we were, uh, Ivy and Bean were looking for money, ways to make money so they can get their Belle de Lone cheese. And they were at Ruby and Trevor's house. Obviously, Trevor started a fire in their backyard, and that wasn't good. Mom got pretty mad about that. They're trying to find ways to make their newsletter so they can make their money to get their cheese, which, they already got their cheese. They just now have to do the newsletter to hand it out to the people that paid them. Anyways, we're going to pick up on the last of the segments of the book. And here we go. Facing the music. It was hard to tell which of the teenagers in the garage was Jake the teenager. Now they're visiting Jake the teenager. They were all big. They were wearing sunglasses. They were all yelling and kicking each other. They were a band. The name of their band was Ball Control. Pretty stupid name, Ivy and Bean thought. I think Jake's the one in the red shirt, said Bean. The one in the red shirt was telling everyone else to be quiet, only he didn't say be quiet. He said something else a lot. What he was saying, hopefully it's not good. Finally, the other teenagers stopped kicking each other and yelling. Jake, the teenager, stood in front of the microphone. A one, a two, a three, a four, he said, and then he began to scream. All the other teenagers began to scream, too. They pounded on their instruments and screamed and screamed. It was the loudest thing in the world. Ivy and Bean plugged their ears. They scrunched their eyes. They hunched their shoulders. No matter what they did, it was still the loudest thing in the world. Then it stopped. Slowly, Bean unplugged her ears. She unscrunched her eyes, and then she unhunched her shoulders. See, that's what they're doing. That was when all that supposedly music was supposed to be happening wasn't happening. Oops! Jake the teenager was standing on the other side of the window, looking at him. Hi, said Bean. Hi, he said. After a second, he asked, What are you doing? Bean thought fast. Listening to your cool band, she said enthusiastically. Jake, the teenager, took his sunglasses off. Not bad, huh? He said. Totally, said Bean. He nodded. He seemed to be waiting for more. Totally awesome, said Bean. But you were plugging your ears, she said. It was loud, but it was great, Bean explained. What was the name of that great song? Asked Ivy. They liked it, Jake, the teenager yelled over his shoulder. The one was Lizard Hurricane. That was the name of the song. Okay. Oh boy. We sure like that song, Bean said. She shook her head as if she were amazed at how much she liked the song. Want to hear the rest? Asked Jake. We got 6 songs. We would be for sure, except we're working, said Bean. We're writing a newspaper about Pancake Court. Dude, said Jake the teenager, write about our band. Write like a music review, about how awesome we are. Sure, said Ivy, no problem. Sure, repeated Bean. The next one's called Nebulizer, he said. You're gonna love it. We have to get writing, said Ivy. Deadline, said Bean, trying to look like she wished she could hear his song. Got to go. Say, we'll play for parties, he yelled after them as they went down the driveway. Dude, trust me, said Bean, waving. Wow, you can really talk teenager, said Ivy. Anyone can do it, said Bean. You just have to practice. It was getting late. We better go to your house and get started, Ivy said to Bean. She thought for a moment. You don't think your dad ate the cheese, do you? Bean shook her head. He wouldn't do that. She looked around. At least I don't think so. Grown-ups like cheese, Ivy said. We better work fast. They're now heading back to their house. Hopefully they can put together a story. They wrote the flipping pancake until it was time for Ivy to go home for dinner. The next day after school, they rushed home to finish it. By the time they were done, Bean's kitchen table was covered with paper, pencils, scissors, erasers, glue sticks, and mess-ups. In the middle of the table was one perfect copy of the flippin' pancake. See, there's a table right there in the middle. That's their new newsletter. The flippin' pancake. Ivy and Bean looked at it admiringly. It was beautiful. At the top, Bean had drawn a pancake with little lines coming out of it to show that it was jumping in the air around the pancake. She had written in her best printing, the flipping pancake. So what if she had forgotten the other P? It still looked great. Below the title was the first story, the one about the rats, the salami in Mr. Columbine's house. Ivy had decided it was mean to say he was dirty, so she had called it Mr. Columbine's secret. After that came Guess the Naked Baby. They had pasted the picture of Crummy Matt to the newspaper. There he was, drooling and smiling on a white rug, his rear end waving in the air. Ivy and Bean had almost stopped laughing about it by now, but not quite. Bean had drawn a picture of Sophie's mom with her hair in a bag and blue goo on her face. Beneath it she had written, Mrs. W. is up to something. That was really all she could say since she didn't know what Sophie's mom was doing. As you can see, there's the pictures. Together, Ivy and Bean had written the exciting story about the fire at Trevor and Ruby's. In fact, they made it a little more exciting than it really had been. They said the entire backyard burst into flames. They also said that Ruby had saved Trevor's life by running over flames to get to the hose. People like to read exciting stories, Bean said. Down at the very bottom of the page, Ivy had written about ball control. She said that they were the famous for Lizard Hurricane, the song. And if you want to drown out loud music, you could ask them over to your house for a party. The story looked a little skimpy, so she also wrote that there was no bad words in their song. She said that a lot of other music that Jake the teenager listened to had bad words in it. She put down the first letter of the really amazing bad word they had heard. Then she drew an arrow and wrote, Not in ball control songs. There had been just enough room to squeeze in a weather report down at the bottom. Bean had drawn a picture of the sun. Wow, said Ivy. I can't believe we made such a great paper. It looks so real. We could get famous for this, said Bean. I mean, she picked up the paper. Not many kids could do a whole newspaper all by themselves. I did a little page trouble here, and I got stuck on it. Oh boy. Ivy nodded. Let's copy it on my mom's copier, she said. Do you think we should give a copy to Sophie W.'s mom, even if she didn't pay for it? You know, because she's in it? No way, said Bean. But she might give us money when she sees how great it is, Ivy explained. Oh, right, said Bean. Yeah, also we have to make one for my dad, so he'll give us our cheese back. He's going to be surprised, said Ivy. Bean nodded. They're all going to be surprised. And they were surprised, but not exactly in the way that Ivy and Bean had imagined. After they delivered the flipping pancake to Gene, Jake, the teenager's dad, Ruby and Trevor's mom, Leanna and Katie's father, Dino and Crummy Matt's mom, Mrs. W. and Mr. Columbine, they brought a copy to Bean's dad. He was on the living room couch reading a magazine. Here, said Bean, can we have our cheese now? You just hang on to your engines, kiddo, he said. He put down his magazine and picked up the flipping pancake. If I see that you two put real work into it, you can have your cheese. There are standards that you have to... He stopped talking and made a funny sound. "Which one are you reading?" asked Ivy. "Mr. Columbi's Secret," he said. But his voice was funny. He was snorting or choking. Oh boy. Getting or something. "Is that Matt?" he asked in a strangled voice. "Does he know?" He was looking at the picture of the baby. Bean looked at Ivy and shrugged. Probably by now. Her father wasn't paying attention. "What is this picture of Sheila?" That was Mrs. W's name. "What's she doing?" "Got me," said Bean. "She was painting her face, her hair, her face. I don't know what she had on her face." He read on. "The twins set their yard on fire? When? Does their mom know?" "Oh, sure, she was there," said Bean. Bean's dad stopped reading and frowned. "How did you get all this anyways?" Bean put her hands on her hips. "Look, we did exactly what you told us to do. We went out and found the story." He opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. For a second, he just stared at her. And then he started laughing. He laughed really, really hard. He almost fell off the couch. "You do that too," said Ivy. "I know, I inherited," said Bean. They watched Bean's dad laugh for a while, and then Bean said again, "Can we have our cheese now?" "What?" Dad said, wiping his eyes. After he's laughing so much. She said it again loudly. "Low-fat Belle Delone cheese in a special just for you serving size," said Ivy, in case he had forgotten. He was still laughing a little, but he got up. "It's all yours, girls. You've earned your cheese." He walked toward the kitchen. "We won," whispered Ivy and Bean together as they followed. "Now, kids," said Bean's dad, handing them their little red bag of cheese. "Even though I think the flipping pancake..." He started laughing again and covered his eyes. "The flipping pancake is a masterpiece, but it just might be too, powerful for some people. Maybe Sheila wouldn't like people to know that she paints her face or hair, for example." "But she does," said Bean, carefully selecting the best ball of cheese. "But maybe she wouldn't want other people to know that," he said. "So maybe we should just keep the flipping pancake here inside our own house." Uh-oh. Ivy and Bean looked at each other. Grown-ups were so weird. "We already made copies and delivered them," Bean said. "You said we took their money and we had to deliver what we promised, so we did." Oh no. The doorbell rang. And a whole ball of wax the next channel. An hour later, Ivy and Bean were lying on Bean's trampoline, squishing their beautiful red wax. Squish, squish, squish. They had come outside when the kitchen got too crowded with grown-ups. Ruby and Trevor's mom had made them promise never to show the flipping pancake to Ruby and Trevor's dad. Mrs. W had stopped by with $1 for her copy, just like Ivy had expected. But she also had asked them to stop looking in her window. Mr. Columbine did too, and Crummy Matt's mom had actually wanted his photo back again. She had even paid for it. $2 just to get a picture back? Ivy shook her head. "Doesn't seem worth it to me." "She's his mom," said Bean. "She probably thinks it's cute. I think she's mad at Dino, though." "Ruby and Trevor are grounded," their mom said. Ivy frowned. "But if you're at home all the time anyways, how can you tell?" "I don't know," said Bean. For a while, they lay peacefully on the trampoline, squishing their wax. Then Bean sat up. Something was shuffling on the other side of her fence. "Do you hear that?" Bean whispered. "What?" whispered Ivy. Then she heard it. "Is it a bear?" She hoped it was. It wasn't a bear. It was whispering. Ivy and Bean slid quietly off the trampoline and tiptoed toward the fence. There was a lot of shuffling going on out there, and they grunted, and the grunt sounded familiar. It was Crummy Matt's grump. "I'll get him," he was saying. He was talking so softly he could, but that wasn't very soft. Ivy bugged her eyes at Bean. "Get him? What did that mean?" Sounded bad. No, whispered a voice. Sounded like Dino. You grab them and I'll get them. But we got to go quick because Mom's going to find out we're gone pretty soon. There was all that stuff about getting them again. Yikes, Bean mouthed to Ivy. I brought blue paint, whispered another voice. If you hold them, I'll paint them. That sounded like Sophie W. Like a mad Sophie W. Blue paint? Ivy put her hands over her cheeks. A blue face would be okay, but not a blue face painted by a mad person. Okay, you have a camera? It sounded like Trevor. Trevor, give me that magnifying glass. You can't light them on fire, Ruby's voice was very high and squeaky. Bean grabbed Ivy's arm and yanked. Time for a getaway. But where? For a second, they just zipped wildly around the yard. Who says I can't? Trevor snarled. We're grounded already. Trevor, give it here. Shh! They'll hear, said Sophie W. Ivy looked at Bean. Inside, she mouthed. No, wait, mouthed Bean. She held up her wax. Quickly, she squished it flat and stuck it under her nose. Then she lay down next to the trampoline. Come on, she beckoned to Ivy. Then she closed her eyes. Come on, grunted Matt. The gate latch rattled and they were coming in. Ivy smashed her wax flat against her forehead and dropped to the ground next to Bean with her eyes closed. The gate opened and banged shut. Whoa, said Trevor. Oh my gosh, whispered Sophie W. What happened to them? Dino said. Is that blood? Ugh, grunted Crummy Matt. I gotta go. There was a lot of sound at the gate opening and closing again. They must have fallen off that trampoline, Ruby whispered. Maybe they're only fainted, said Sophie. We could check, said Ruby. They didn't. Should we tell the grown-ups? Dino asked quietly. There was a long silence. Then Sophie sighed. Okay, I'll do it. Let's go, said Dino. The gate banged again. Footsteps went away down the driveway. Bean opened one eye. They're gone, she whispered. She peeled the wax from her lip and nudged Ivy. Pretty good, huh? Ivy giggled. They thought we were dead. She took the wax off her forehead. I love this stuff. And there's a picture of them. They were on the trampoline looking like they were dead. The wax smashed on their faces. That was pretty cool of them. It's kind of challenging in the last pages. From far away inside the house, they heard the doorbell ring. But they didn't answer it. They knew who it was. And besides, they were busy jumping. A second later, they heard the sound of Bean's dad running. They watched as he flew out the back door and skidded across the porch. Are you okay? He yelled. Ivy and Bean stopped jumping. We're fine, said Bean. Sophie said you were hurt, he panted. Oh, that's Sophie, said Ivy. She was probably just joking. No, he began, and then he stopped and frowned. Do you think this has something to do with the flipping pancake? Bean and Ivy looked at each other and then back at Bean's dad. They made their eyes big. How could it? Ivy asked. Dad, said Bean, thanks for giving us the idea to do a newspaper. It was really fun. Anytime. I'm full of good ideas. Bean reached into her pocket and pulled out a circle of cheese. It was a little bit fuzzy. Here, she handed out to her dad. This is our thank you present. You can have mine too, said Ivy. What? Said Bean's dad. I thought you'd love this cheese. Nah. Actually, said Ivy, cheese is kind of gross. But you might like it, said Bean. Bean's dad turned around and walked into the house without saying a word. What's the matter with him? Whispered Ivy. Bean shrugged. Maybe he's tired. She set the circle of cheese on the edge of the trampoline and held up her wax. So did Ivy. Squish, 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 squish. The end. Wow. Well, that was the last of the story. All about Ivy and Bean and their ball of wax that they got from their belladonna and cheese. Hope you enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll catch you next time on another story. is Poppy Robert Productions at Staying at Home Studios.